Okay, so let's start off by just saying hello. We're going to say it in the three languages. Over here, the block A chart, we're going to say Wachie. And then block C under the clock, we're going to say Anin. And then block D, we're going to say Bojo. So those are your three ways to greet someone in Anishinaabemowin. Okay? So let's start. Wachie. Okay, so let's start it together. 1, 2, 3. Wachie. Okay, Anin. Bojo. Okay, so the Anin, you would see a lot of Ojibwe people, they would say that to one another, especially from Southern Ontario. That's how they would greet each other. What does Anin mean to you? My name is Desta Buswa, and I was born in Red Lake, Ontario on May 11, 1971. I am the eldest daughter of Linda Rae and Joe Kiesek, and my parents had 6 children, and there were 3 girls and 3 boys born to Linda and Joe. There were a lot of responsibilities that I had being the eldest, even though I was only 3.5 years old. And certainly one of the responsibilities I would have been expected to complete was to keep an eye out for my siblings. And I recall one day being in my parents' home and hearing a knock at the door. There was a children's aid worker at our door and 1 police officer. I knew that our mother wasn't in the house, but that wasn't unusual for me. Like, I was raised with a real non-interference style of parenting. So it wasn't unusual that I would be by myself, whether I was playing in the woods near our home or that I would be alone with my siblings. That was not unusual. I remember the worker picked up my brother and my sister and held their hands. And I remember the police officer picked up my 2 brothers, the brothers that are twins, John and Samuel. The worker said to me, "Do you want to come with us?" And I remember looking at the worker. I remember hearing her words in English. I remember translating them into Ojibwe in my mind to have a full understanding of what she was saying. And then I remember when I was going to communicate back to her, I remember just nodding. Yes, yes, I do want to come with you. But it wasn't because I felt that we were in harm's way in our home or that we weren't being supervised properly. The only reason I wanted to go with her was because I was responsible of taking care of my brothers and my sister, so being the eldest. So wherever my siblings were going, then yes, clearly I was going to follow. As we were walking from the house to the police car, I didn't realize that all along my grandparents, who lived right next door to us, were watching the house very intently. Because again, when a police car pulled up to an Indigenous person's house in the 70s, there were many valid reasons for that family to be concerned. So my grandparents were standing at their door, watching and looking. And when they saw the children's aid worker and the police officer walking out with their grandchildren, and they saw me just following, behind, my grandfather ran out of his house and he ran towards us. And he scooped me up into his arms And then he turned and ran back into his house. And on that particular day, that's where my memories end with my siblings. That particular day marked the day that my siblings left our home and never returned again, for like never returned permanently to our family. It wasn't long after that John and Samuel and Sarah and Joe were apprehended. It wasn't long after that they were adopted and went on to move out of the Red Lake area. And my 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 mother never saw her children again when they were adopted.
It was a big secret back in Moose Factory. I think it was 12 or 13. I came approached my grandfather about that, and I asked him. I said, why are we so different from our cousins?" He says, "That's when the my grandfather opened up the chest, and that's when he showed us all our adoption papers and all our pictures and letters from our parents written to us, and it was." I would say it was very emotional finally finding out you were adopted, and people always treating you with saying, keeping it hush hush. It was kind of hard. Then finally you're realizing that you're not from this family. There was times where I wish that we were never adopted, that we were still as a family, still as one, having grown up with each other. There was anger, there was resentment, and there was hate in me, and not knowing. I was asking, why was I adopted? Why were we not good enough for them? But there was other, I would say, the darker past to it that I I really had to let go and forgive and come to come to terms with it. Now I look at it now in a whole different perspective. But I wish I can meet my older brother. That's still in the States. But we do talk to each other from time to time and see how everything's going.
You never met Joe?
I never met my brother Joe. I truly believe that it's the alcohol and the drugs that really bring down our native people who've been adopted, who've been abused, who went to residential school. And I seen a lot that because with my mom, my stepmom, she always covered that with alcohol. I said, don't hurt yourself because you're just hurting because of your residential school. I truly believe that people do need to really, if they really want to heal from all that trauma and all that stuff, I really truly believe that counseling or sweats, traditional ways, whatever they can find, and I truly believe they can really heal from it. But some of those people they're so far down that they can't really come back up, be reachable. Those are the ones that you really gotta pray for and hope for the best. I never got to meet my mother, never, and I have until this day. I always thought of her, think of her, and trying to picture her how she was. And there's these like late pictures and little things here and there that just hit and miss that I try to remember about her. But I always wish I did meet my mother though. I never got that chance. I was in Cochrane when I had that dream. I was walking in this like prairies, and as I was walking, and the grass was getting thicker and higher. That's when I saw my mom. She was this young, beautiful native woman, young, smiling. My boy, she says, been waiting for you for so long, she says. I've been watching you for the longest time. I said, as much as I wanted to see you, she said, I can't. I said, but I'm still finding myself. I told her, I'm trying to find where home is. And that's when she says, one day you're gonna find yourself. One day you're gonna find home, and that's where you're gonna be. I just looked at her as I was crying. I was literally like crying like a baby. There was just like glass, like a big piece of glass just all around us. I tried hard to go see her, to hold her, just to grab her. I wanted to hold my mom. Couldn't even do it. I was crying and looking at my mom and banging on that window and telling my mom, I don't want you to go. Stay, stay, stay. She's like, I gotta go. There's, it's not your time yet, she says.
My late father, and my late mother had a very trying relationship because they both attended residential school in the 60s. Their life experiences were really impacted from attending Indian residential school. And unfortunately, I don't feel my mother ever um, he, really fully healed or healed to her full potential from her residential school experiences. Um, my mother died in a very tragic manner. She died before she reached the age of 40. My mother died an alcoholic, and I distinctly recall her saying, Desta, it's like a piece of you is missing when your children are away from you. So, for my mother to have had four of her children apprehended and to have never been like, to never have re engaged with those children before she died, that's probably one of the saddest experiences that I will take away from my relationship with my mother. It's really heartbreaking when I think of it today, because when I think of my parents and picture them in these residential schools, I can't help but also remember all the loving family members that were not in that picture. I can't help but think of my father, his mother, and his father, that they would have been at their family trap line, and they would have wanted nothing more but for their son to be with them. And respectively with my mom also, I think about that of all the times missed that my mother didn't have with her siblings and with her parents because she was in Indian residential school. And I think that my parents paid a great price for what was a very popular Canadian government policy at that time. And I think as Canadians, we all owe a part of that history, and we all owe a part of ensuring that we're all part of a truth and reconciliation action to ensure that we learn from those experiences, because it's simply a mistake that we cannot repeat again as a country. So when I was 19 years old, I finished high school and I was accepted into teachers college, and I decided I needed to return to Red Lake the summer before I began my first year at university, because I knew that I needed to go back to Red Lake where and go back and face all of those memories of my childhood, the positive memories, to be reminded of those good times. But there were also many memories that were like the scars were very fresh still within my emotions. There were many memories where I would have great levels of shame because of my mother's alcoholic lifestyle. In a small town, as you can imagine, sometimes people, whether they meant to or not, sometimes they deflected. And, I became known as Linda Rae's daughter. And unfortunately, when your mother is an alcoholic, as my mother was, that had negative connotations associated with it. My grandmother would always tell me, Gopajia Gamama. And in our language, what that means is to have pity or to have compassion. In this instance, she was talking about my mother. So, Gopajia Gamama, have pity, have compassion for your mother. And I remember being a young girl when I would be at the suffering at the hands of my mother after my brothers and my sister left our home, because I was the only one left for her to target her pain onto. I was the only one left. So I suffered on my own with my mother. And I remember as I was growing up, when my grandmother would tell me that, I remember being mad at my gukam, and I would say to my gukam, my grandmother, I would say, no, she does not deserve pity. She does not deserve compassion. So when my siblings were reunited with my family, I am so happy that I was able to share with my siblings that I stood in on behalf of all my siblings to tell our mother that we forgave her. That we loved her even if she didn't deserve that love. Even if she didn't deserve our forgiveness, because we all paid a great price. My brothers and my sister, we all paid a great price by, the policies of the day determining what they thought was in the best interest of the Indigenous child. We paid a great price for all of that. And I didn't want my mother to continue to pay a price, because she paid dearly enough. she paid dearly enough.
Where you from? Way down south. How far down? What color J-town? My mom keeps calling me. My friends keep texting me. Sorry guys, whatever it takes. Delivery guy wants to know if I'm okay. Okay. Nah, man, but thanks. Temple throb does lakes, black gold, tigers and saints, and saints, and saints. I swear I'm the shell of a man, and you said, now you're a hell of a man. Tear up, stand up. Tear up, stand up. My dad, he went away, real far away. It can't break. My mom, now she's a saint, a saint, a saint. Sorry guys, whatever it takes. So and so wants to know if I'm okay. Okay. Yeah, sure.